Yes.
Good evening, all. This is Joy Hopkins, William Penn School District Vice President. Welcome to our policy meeting for October 7th, and we are beginning at 6:30 p.m. And in the chat, you can find the presentation for this evening's um, presentation. I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Danielle Seward, who is going to do our presentation.
All right, happily sharing my screen, and good evening to all. So is everybody able to see this? Thumbs up, we're good?
Thumbs up.
Okay, great. All righty, so welcome once again. So tonight we're going to be we're re-evaluating 247, policy 247 on hazing, and policy 903 on public participation in board meetings. So on to the first one. Now, if you recall, we reviewed this policy. Oh, you know what? This is, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm sorry. We reviewed this policy in September, and during that review, there were various questions that came up, and so I wanted to come back to the group with responses to those questions. So the first question was around the complaint procedure, and just so to jog everybody's memory, I'm going to the actual policy. On page 5, I'm scrolling. Please forgive me if it's kind of giving you vertigo. But on page 5, when we talked about this section, we talked about, there was a comment, and I can't remember who made it, but it was like, the question was, well, wait a minute, don't we have a complaint process through this policy over here? And I think there's a complaint process through that policy over there. And so taking that feedback, it caused me to go back and do more research. And the person who made the comment was right. We do have some other policies, which I've listed here. There's a complaint process. It's called complaint process, but it's under the employee section. There is a student complaint process, which is under the student section. There's policy 103. This is non-discrimination in school and classroom practices. And then there's non-discrimination for employees as well. Both of these two I'd like to highlight because the report form for the complaints is aligned to both of these. So it's the tool for both of these policies. So I'm just going to click on it because one of the things I wanted to highlight in this existing board policy, which is very similar language to the harassment one, by the way, because it talks about sexual harassment, but it also goes into, and here I go, haha, look at that. Complaint procedure. So there's a whole written procedure already there about reporting, what you're supposed to do to report it. Yes, and it goes like step by step. And we've already established that compliance officer, that's me. And so here is the step 2, investigation. This is what you're supposed to do to investigate the complaint. And step 3, investigative report. It gives guidance around how we're supposed to report it. And then it gives guidance around what district action there should be as a result of the investigation. And then there's even an appeal procedure. And so I wanted to highlight this because I really appreciated the question because it made me dig deeper. And the same language is in 104 as well for employees. And both of them utilize this form, which I think we'll like because number 1, it's a form we already use. And number 2, it's only 1 page and it's a lot simpler to use. It's 1 page and that's it. Now, as we highlighted in our last conversation, this isn't the only way that somebody can administer a complaint. They could do it verbally to a caring adult in the building or to a supervisor, or if the supervisor is the subject of the complaint, coming to me or coming, there's different ways of lodging a complaint, but this is an existing document that we already have. So one thing that is on my to-do list is to really raise the visibility of this document, because I don't think people know about this document, and I don't think it's readily available to students and to employees. So one of the things I want to highlight, when we do these weekly updates to principals, is highlighting this document, highlighting those two policies so that people are aware. It's not like people are reading policies all the time. So I get it. Because I do think that it's a powerful document to use and tool for our kids. And
I also know that, the kids are in these digital ages, and I get that. So, but to bring the awareness, can we at least put, and we don't have to have a whole big stockpile of paper, but just, a couple here and there in the common areas, like in the cafeteria,
Yep.
out in the hallway when they first come in, somewhere around the, the auditorium, just a couple, hanging on the wall, just in case somebody wants to, grab some,
And maybe with the heading.
Yeah.
and with the heading, right.
What
the
it
highlight,
is.
right.
And I was also thinking about turning this into a digital document, that because each one of our counselors has a Google Classroom.
Okay.
So where they can, do meetings and things like that, or have a cool down room or whatever. I would like this to be a resource that's available there too.
Okay.
For a student, particularly our virtual students. I mean, we have students who are in the PLC as well,
That's
who might
right.
not physically be in the building, and they
Absolutely.
need a way of complaining. So those were my thoughts. And so, like I said, I really appreciate that comment and that question, because it really made me dig deeper. And then the second one, we talked about making sure our complaint procedure aligned, right? So I am suggesting that, you know what?
Right. Catch that. Yep.
Yeah, you know how I am. So I was suggesting that under that passage on page 5, that we add this language that again links the policies together, refers to them together, and talks about the use of that form as the tool that would be used for this policy, as well as policy 103 and policy 104 refer to this document.
I know, now, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that you guys do it in that Google form stuff, that Google Doc stuff, or whatever that stuff called. I'm still old head. And y'all do those links when y'all send the board, the updates and stuff. So can you do that in the board docs on the website where people can access it? Can y'all do that too?
Actually, it's already there.
Hallelujah. Okay.
It's already there. It's an
awesome.
attachment to 103 and 104. And then once we, pass the revised hazing policy, it'll be attached to that as well.
Okay. And another thing I want to look at in the future, because I don't want to hold this as longer than we have to, those attachments on other policies. I want to know if we can start maybe filtering those in so that the policy book doesn't be as well, the policy manual online doesn't be as, I don't want to say thick because it's digital, but so if a person goes in and they want to see policy number 103 and they want to know a form is attached, they can just be right there versus having to go and click on something else. Did that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. And actually, I'm glad Mary's on the screen, because Mary and I have been having these deep, rich, and engaging conversations about board docs and about, the capabilities of the system and expanding the capabilities of the system. So I think that's something else that I'm glad Mary got to hear that as well, that we can go back and, unpack some more to make it more user-friendly for people, because I really do want to make it more user-friendly.
That's the word I was looking for, user-friendly. Thank you.
Well, if, like, for instance, our board documents, when you want us to look at something specifically,
right,
you have the link right there within.
Right.
Okay. And the question that I had, will you be changing the title or having 3 different leads, or saying this is for all of them?
Do you mean for the form?
Correct.
Yes, I think, and I'm open to suggestion on this, because right now the form itself says complaints for discrimination/discriminatory harassment. We have the leeway to be able to change the name to whatever we want it to be. I mean, so I'm open to suggestions.
So we have to put student and employee, so we know that it's both.
Right.
That's the start.
So like right now, the language on there just is very general. So it's like, it's just complaints for this. And we can keep it that way, but we can expand the definitions or the language, because if I'm a kid, I might not know what discrimination or discriminatory harassment means. So I think we can kind of make it a simpler language so that all understand this is the document you use when this is happening to you.
Yeah.
So I'll work with some wordplay on that, and I'll come back with this is what I came up with, and y'all can give me some feedback on it. Is that cool?
That's cool.
All right, I'm gonna make a note of that. All righty. And so that I'm not belaboring the point. Then we also talked about making sure we aligned on page 6. It started to talk about safe schools and safe school reporting. And the comment was made that we want to make sure that the policy aligns with the policy and the procedures align with safe schools reporting and timelines. So I did a little research, and I saw that PSBA actually used the safe schools legislation to update the policy. So I know that the language does align, but also the reporting piece of it. And again, I really appreciate the ability to deep dive on this, is that this is the timeline from the Safe Schools website for reporting. So you'll see the different things that we have to report on and when we had to report on these things. And I highlight down here, Safe Schools ACS report. So this is the report from the incident reports that schools submit, the accident support reports that people submit, like if there's a physical injury because of an accident, all those reports, all the fire drills, all the shelter in place drills, all the bus drills, all that stuff is collected all through the year. And then we have to report it in a PIMS report. And that PIMS report through PDE's website, and it generates the Safe Schools report. So I linked in the report for the entire district from 1920, because the one for 2021 wasn't available. And honestly, I feel like it wouldn't really give us a true representation because we weren't in school. We were half of the year we were virtual, and the other half we were hybrid, and we only had around 30% of the students in school. So I think this kind of gives you a better understanding of the type of data that's pulled. So this is from the 1920 school year, and you'll see that you see all these categories here. And you see sexual assault, things like that. These are predetermined categories from Safe Schools. So if people are filling out that report that we just talked about, or that complaint, that gets added as a 1 here. So we're reporting these instances too. So this opportunity to review the hazing policy also gives us an opportunity to, number 1, make this more known to people that this is an option for getting help, and number 2, making us more accountable and transparent about instances where these things happen. So that's what I wanted to highlight for you. And each school has one of these sheets. Every school has one. And this one I did district wide though, just to give you a bigger view. But I wanted to highlight that to kind of align and let you see like how collecting this information in this form does represent how we report the information to PDE against the Safe Schools legislation and requirements.
Got it.
Yes, okay, all righty. So we talked about how it aligns. We talked about the timelines. I want to make sure I hit everybody's stuff. Everybody's things. So how do we report incidents? So like I just said, there's the reporting form for discrimination and harassment, which we talk about lifting the visibility of this, but we also have the incident report, which I just mentioned, and we also have the injury report. And like I said, we have to report that by July 31st. And that's how we do it. So then I'm just at questions and discussion.
I forgot we're on a meeting. I'm sorry.
So but I do appreciate the opportunity to deep dive. You know, I am a researcher, so I love being able to do that. So I appreciate the opportunity.
And
So
I
now,
appreciate that you did this. And one more thing that I wanted to highlight, did we or did we not get there was my brain, I wish Jennifer was on here, but we did a safety brochure.
She kept saying safe to say.
No, not safe to say.
Not that, because I know that was a program.
There was a safety brochure that was printed out, I want to say 2019. And I would love, I don't have any clue what I did with it. It was a draft copy and I wanted to get a final. I don't think I got a final, but anywho, could you check with Mr. Rickers to see if we have that so that we can also align that safety brochure with this 247. The only thing is that this topic is talking about hazing, and that wasn't. It was more aligned to safe schools. But I just wanted all of that to be together, and I didn't want to.
It should be, because hazing on the Department of Ed's website does talk about. It's under the banner of safe schools. So it's all in one. So I think that makes sense to me. So I'll check with him to see if he has something, and I'll check through Dr. Bruno's historical files, because he made a big file for me, so I can kind of search in there as well.
Okay, cool beans. All right, next topic.
Next topic, policy 903. So I'm going to go directly to the policy, but Ms. Hopkins, if you would like to share, the background on why we're reviewing this today.
Right. So as we have the public discussions and presentations at our board meetings in person, as everyone knows, we identify the public presenter identifies themselves via their name and the town that they either reside or pay taxes in. And there is no, because, we never knew that we were going to virtual, we have to have some kind of language that also states that we are virtually having to adhere to the same policy. So we try to develop language. Well, first, I asked Ms. Seward if she could research if there is language. I also researched to see if there was language, so that we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. And so that's the background.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All righty, so I put the new language in blue. There really isn't any old language that I struck through, because our policy language was literally the same as what PSBA had suggested. It was just in different formats and it had different sections. So the sections that we did not have under authority, so we had purpose, which was fine, same as before. They added authority. So it is this section that I really like to highlight. This is language, this part, this part is from PSBA. So those two pieces right there are from PSBA. This here is from research and reading other people's policies. So I noticed and I want to say it was Upper Darby, or it might have been Southeast Delcos, where they talked about the types of comments. And that was a really interesting strategy for me to really dive into a little bit more. So they talked about in-person comments. And in-person comments talking about you're physically present at the meeting. The ability for an individual to make in-person comments is governed by the guidelines below. But then I looked for language around virtual comments. And that is what I added in here for us to discuss and consider this evening. So these are, I'm sorry, here we go. Board shall allow 2 types of comments in all official meetings: in-person comments and comments submitted in writing or verbally using a verbal meeting platform. So this is virtual comment. When using a virtual meeting platform, a comment made by an individual virtually present at an official meeting. The ability of the individual to make a virtual comment is governed by the guidelines below. That language is key because the guidelines below, and I know I'm skipping, but the guidelines below clearly say that they have to identify, oh, there we go. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and that is the language that was in our previous policy. I know our practice has been that people just say the borough from which they're from, not their actual address, and group affiliation if appropriate. So that's for the presiding officer, public guidelines, following the guidelines. So,
and I wanted to, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
That also reminded me, in our board leadership, county board leadership, we had this discussion about organizational representation. And again, I'm going to say that was either Haverford or Havertown, or it was Upper Darby that made a comment that said that the NAACP, a representative of the NAACP came to make a presentation at their board meeting, but they did not allow them to represent the NAACP at the board. They had to do X, Y, and Z before they were allowed to present. And I just wanted to be clear, make clarity. So for us to think about that part of the language of a group affiliation, or, and the word if appropriate. I personally don't mind a group affiliation if they are paying, dues or some kind of affiliation fee to be here. But then what if they're not? Like, I know the Black social workers of Delaware County, we don't pay a fee to the county, but I know if we have an issue like fair funding and we want to discuss it at your board meeting, because as social workers, we're all for it and we want to make a comment, then we won't be able to make the comment because it might not be appropriate. So how do we determine that, and where do we determine that? So I think we need to have further discussion on that at a later date. I just wanted this to be presented, but I also wanted to throw that in there as well.
No, absolutely. And this, keep in mind also, this goes further by talking, and this again is our existing policy.
Can you do me a favor? Can you put your comment thingy right there to say further discussion about group affiliation?
Absolutely.
Thank you, my dear. Appreciate you.
Okay. Cool. It's done.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, comment. Boom. Alrighty. So I just want to go back up to the new language and see if anybody has any feedback on that, because I just didn't want to skip over it, but I did want to give context on what it is. And what my thinking was around it, to widen the scope of the types of comments to address the virtual issue, but also to bind it to the guidelines and requirements as stated below in the guidelines. So that kind of gives you the best of both worlds and accountability for virtual comment or an in-person comment. And so that we
do you think you have to delineate public virtual? Or because in essence, virtual, you're still in a public environment. So is it in person? So I don't know if you have, do we need to? That's just throwing it out there.
I'm thinking.
I'm not sure your question either.
So where we're talking about public comment on like how you have to govern yourself accordingly,
Mhm.
is it in person and virtually or public? And that encompasses both.
So an in-person comment or a virtual comment would be in a public setting.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes, they would be,
Okay.
because this whole thing, the crux of this is really, or the universe we're talking about is during a public board meeting.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So, oh, I do want to highlight also, there's timekeeping. This again, just a revisit to the policy that we already have. And this language here. So I did want to highlight this because this is the only thing that like is additional language. Again, this was this language right here was exactly the same as the PSBA's language, except for this line right here. So this bullet talks about the presiding officer being able to interrupt or terminate a participant's statement when it becomes too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, requests anyone to leave the meeting, if they become, unreasonable decorum, or if they become, unruly, law enforcement officers, disorderly conduct, you get the gist. And the presiding officer can call a recess or adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as warrant such action. And in this litany of things that the presiding officer could do, they can also waive these rules with the approval of the board when constraints such as time occur. So that was additional language that we can choose not to add, but I wanted to at least put it before you and say, this is language that was given to us by PSBA.
That last line was given by PSBA.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
They had literally exactly what we had, but they had that additional line. I didn't get a rationale as to why that was there.
Subjectivity can be scary.
I mean, I understand.
I do. I get it.
Maybe somebody is speaking for a long time on something that is very important to the district. And
Yeah, I know we normally don't have that kind of board meetings.
Mm-hmm.
There are board meetings that run till like 11 o'clock, 11:30, some midnight, some even later than that. And I think they really wanted to get a handle on, how, because people, I don't want to say that. I'm not going to say that. Because, it has to be some type of, especially when people are getting heated, some kind of decorum to these meetings, and they're supposed to be ran as business meetings, and it's not a free for all. And I think we're really getting at, in trying to get ruling in how these meetings are being conducted. So I think that's where that language was coming from.
So if you're okay with it, we can keep it in as added language.
I'm okay with it, but I need you to go back up because I want to know, when did we change from, because apparently, okay, so this one says 3 minutes, this one says 3 minutes. Okay, so so that's where I'm confused. So number 4, it's public comment on agenda items, they get 3.5. For general, they only get 3 minutes. And so I have been timing everybody for 3 minutes. And so I I don't know if we want to continue with the 3.5 on agenda items or just keep it at 3. So I think we need to bring that up to the whole board. So if you could also, again, highlight that to bring that issue up with the rest of the board, to see if we want to keep that at 3.5 minutes. Because like I said, I've been timing public comments to 3 minutes.
Ladies, please pardon my interruption, but I do need to attend another meeting.
Okie dokie. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good job,
And
Danielle.
we're almost done anyway.
Okay. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Bye-bye.
All righty. Yeah, it's 3.5, but yeah, go for it. And you
Okay.
know, have the conversation. Continuity's good thing. I think it's a conversation the board should have. So that's really it.
Okay.
And like I said, I just added, this was an additional section, delegation of responsibility, that we just didn't have. But it just gives the authority of the presiding officer for each board meeting to
Mhm.
follow the board policy for conducting the meetings.
Yeah, especially from PSBA. Right.
So
Okay.
that
thank-
is it for
thank-
me.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you. Appreciate, the work that you did.
Thank you.
So next month we're going to present this to the rest of the board. Let them know what language. Also have a discussion regarding the time limit, and make sure that I time these meetings perfectly. I don't want to be out of order. And then to start looking at reviewing policies 100 to 105 for next. So if those who are in attendance and those who are reviewing this on YouTube, if you can begin going on our website, if you don't have it in your hand, go on the website and look up our board policies 100 through 105. Read language that is on there, and let's come back next month and start discussing revisions. My homework is that I will make sure that those policies are aligned to the PSBA's policy, and we will reconvene. What is that? November what? I forgot to look on my calendar before I came. November 4th. Okay.
Yes.
So
That's
our
6:30
next meeting
sharp.
is November 4th at 6:30 p.m. Be there or be square. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.